Listen to the Vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. I'm very happy to welcome Carolina Gutierrez here. Now, she is a medium, but you're an entrepreneur, a mental health advocate, and a podcaster yourself.
I am, yeah.
Well, tell us a
Thanks
little
for
bit.
having me, Kyle. I'm excited.
Oh, no problem. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. Just before we start, do you prefer Kyle or Coyote? I don't want to kind
Whatever
of
you're,
ruin the vibe.
what,
Whatever.
whatever you're more comfortable with.
Okay, awesome. Well, yeah, thanks for having me on. I am a medium. I've been hearing spirits since I was 4 years old, and I have been doing readings for the public for the last 20 years. But I'm also an entrepreneur. I love business, and I love the ability to be able to combine those two things, right? Um, I think entrepreneurship is very intuition led. So I think that there's a lot of people there listening to that internal voice when they take that leap out into the world. And yeah, I also believe I'm a trained counselor. I'm a social work student by training. So I am a licensed counselor here in Ontario, Canada. So I definitely combine the importance of spirit in my life and having leading a spirit-led life, like I say, with mental wellness. I think if we can't, as individuals, be able to trust ourselves and listen to that internal guidance, I think that that definitely takes a toll on our mental health. So I think that there's a world where we can combine those two for sure. And my podcast is about intuition because I'm absolutely obsessed about the topic. So I want to share that with the world and help others really understand that this is an innate gift that we all have and to cultivate it for themselves.
When it comes to business and your mediumship, I know we talked a little bit about that voice that comes into your head. It's not just your internal voice talking to you. Do you think that there's actually some spirit guidance in doing business?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. You know, when it first started, when I was very young, I had no idea. And it wasn't until I was in my early 20s that I understood what this actually was. And that not everybody had the same internal experience that I was having. And really, as a, when I later understood from a mental health perspective, not everyone also had the positive experience that I had in regards when it came to hearing voices and hearing others. And I'm very grateful every day that that's been my experience because I've worked with a lot of people that hasn't been the case. But definitely, I would say not only is it got my guides, because my guides absolutely, I definitely feel when it comes to business ideas, when it comes to, hey, listen, you gave it a run, it's time to let this go, because that's very difficult as an entrepreneur as well, kind of knowing when to hang up your hat. But yeah, definitely there's guidance there. Um, I would also say that if you're not trained, um, especially when it comes to hearing clear audience, um, you can hear everything under the sun, right? Like you can hear a tree, you can hear the past loved one of a neighbor, you can hear somebody that's just walking down the street, you can hear egregores or thought forms that develop into uh, entities or energies that kind of float around. So it can be quite overwhelming. I'm happy to say that in my business ventures, I was already at a state where I could identify where it was my team versus the external world, and that definitely plays a role.
When it comes to my podcast, I've had conflicting voices in my head. I just thought it was me weighing both sides on whether to continue to do it or not. And part of me is like, yes, you need to keep doing this. Part of me is like, you know what? You're wasting your time. Give it up. How do I know which one to listen to?
So in the training that I do for people and helping them develop their intuition, one of the things that's really important is to, number one, identify what the voice of your ego sounds like and what the voice of your spirits sound like, or your guides or your intuition, or whatever label you want, because I know there's a lot of different names that people can call that, right? Depending on your religious affiliation, sometimes people are like, I'm listening to the Holy Spirit. Okay, sure, whatever you want to call it. But there are techniques there for you to identify that, right? One of the things that, one of the pro tips that I give people is you want to develop what I call the secret handshake. And the secret handshake is there's a particular way that your guides should identify themselves to you, and you'll establish whatever that is. Maybe it's a dance, maybe it's a rhythm of a song that you hear in your head, maybe it's a particular color or the smell of apple pie, whatever that is. But when you see that, hear that, know that, or feel that, you know that that's your guide coming through, right? And that's where you're going to start to differentiate. Is this my voice versus the guidance that's around me, right? And because it's not something that you've actively tried to develop, you know, you still hear that wisdom. It's just the identifying of where that wisdom comes from. And the other reality too is we have more than one guide, right? So it's understanding, is it your guide? Maybe it's your ancestors. Maybe it's a departed loved one that's coming through and trying to give you some advice. Like for me, for years before understanding what this gift was, it would come through in my cooking. So I don't come from a family of cooks. I come from people that barely know how to cook, to be honest with you. No offense to my family. Everyone, my mom tried her best, but she openly says, she's like, if I hate doing this, right? Like this is to survive, but that's about it. Yet I came out of the womb with an incredible ability to cook without being trained, without knowing. But I literally hear whispers, leave it 5 minutes more, add a little bit of water. You need this spice. And it's something that just constantly guides me. So if I can give you one tip for that is, try and set up that secret handshake, because that becomes really handy. And when the guidance comes through, you can ask, who's this coming from? Is this me? Or is this, my guides or something else, really, right? Because if you have that ability, you might be opening up or have those windows and doors open to other things that you don't necessarily know about. And that's why safety can become really important in doing this work.
So you would be able to tell someone, yes, you have a spirit trying to contact you?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it depends on the spirit as well, right? They don't all try and contact us the same way. It depends who in your spirit crew, your backup crew, I call them. It's kind of like your backup singers. Who's the one stepping forward? Because we have different guides for different things. And there's a season, reason, and lifetime that they come in. Some of them are there. You have your main guide that's there with you from birth until you take your last breath. And then you have other ones that come in for a certain time in your life or for certain things. So you see new parents, usually you'll see a new guide starting to step forward. And throughout the lifetime of that child, as the parenting has to shift based on what stage that child is at, that guide might shift as well, right? That's a very common example of one. So we have a chorus of people in the background helping us, good and bad. That's the other thing that a lot of people don't talk about, right? So if you do have these abilities, I work with a lot of people who have had them and don't want to work with them and have fought for years to not work with them. And they're tortured. They literally tell me they feel tortured because they're like, I can't make this go away. And I'm like, because you can't. It's probably tied into your purpose or why you're here. And so the reality with this is the only way to get over it is going through it. There's no skipping over it, right? Kind of like certain hard lessons in life, right? As much as you want to bury your head in the sand, that's not going to change anything. And for people where mediumship is tied into their purpose, that's usually the case. And so it's like, listen, you want to feel better, you got to work at this. You got to develop it because that's going to be the only way.
Let's talk about the mental health part of it, because that's something I'm also very interested in. When did you get started doing that?
So for me, it wasn't, I wasn't born in knowing that that's where I was going to go in life. Absolutely. But, life gives you twists and turns. And it was something that came very naturally to me, and I never understood why. So I was a person that, and I don't know if it was the mediumship aspect in me or if it was just the natural caring aspect in me, but even when I was a child, like 9, 10 years old, I'd be talking to somebody in the elevator when I was going to school because I lived in a building. Or I'd be at the bus stop and I'd talk to somebody there. And like within minutes, these complete strangers would start to cry. And I was beside I was like, what is wrong with me? Why do I make all these people cry? And later on I found out was the when you're in mental health and when you're in counseling of any type, it's very important for you to build rapport, right? If you don't trust me, if you don't feel comfortable around me, if I don't give you a sense of peace or tranquility, chances are you're not going to open up to me, right? And we're not going to get very far. And so it's funny because for years I felt burdened with that, not understanding what it was. And then later on, it became really handy. So around the time that I discovered the mediumship ability, it was in my early 20s, and I was taking a course on hypnosis. And there was a medium in the group. And, never in my wildest dreams did I ever think that something like this would be part of my life. But we were there, we all went out to lunch, and she was just giving mini readings to the people in the group. And I was like, oh, me next, me next, And as soon as she connects, she says, girl, you're more intuitive than I am. You need to be doing this for a living. She's like, how do you not know this? And I was like, and like, you could have knocked me over with a feather at that point because I'm what? Now I was open, clearly I was taking a hypnosis course, but never, I always thought that people just knew this from birth, that they would have these abilities. And she says to me, it's tied to your purpose. And you really need to start paying attention because you think that you have all these odd stories that come into your mind when you meet a person or these like images and stuff. She was pay attention to them. And that moment when somebody says something to you and all of a sudden your life makes sense. And it's just this like one little thing that all of it, you had no idea. And you turn the corner and this whole new world opens up to you that was always there. You just never, put two and two together. That's exactly what happened when she said that, because I was, looking back at my life and, I tell this story. I used to waitress when I was in school and in high school. And there was this big group of people, it was maybe 12 or 13 people. And as soon as I approached, even before I said hello and, kind of started my spiel, the guy at the table says, if you guess my sign correctly, my astrological sign, there'll be an extra tip. And I was like, okay, that's so random. So I said the first thing. I didn't even, like, I just said the first, the entire table went quiet. It just went hush. And I was like, did I get it wrong? And they're like, no, you got it right. And like one of them was a statistics major or something. And they're like, do you know the odds of you? And I was like, no. They're like, do it again. And of course I couldn't do it again because now I was trying and I was getting my head into it. So, and I have lots of stories like that where it was like, oh, my gifts were coming through and I didn't realize it. So, so I started, I went, I definitely started paying attention to that. And I was in a very bad marriage at the time. I was very, very unhappy. And, my, as I listened to my guides more, and I opened up the ability, because I didn't go get trained, right? My guides pretty much, when she said listen, and it's not your own voice, it's a team helping you, and kind of all the worldview that she had on that, because there's a lot of different worldviews that can be applied to how spirits show up in your life. Some don't believe that it's spirit, some that do, um, whatever you want to label it. When I started listening to it, they're like, get out of this marriage. Like, this is bad. You can't be doing this. This is holding you back from what you want to do, and you're not happy. And so it really started to become clear to me how important it was, the role that intuition played. And concurrently, I had been trying to go back to school. I had struggled quite a bit in high school, and I couldn't understand why. And when I was able to, I had gone and failed a couple times. I just wouldn't be able to finish. And the third time that happened, my guides were like, you need to go get tested. You need to go get tested because something, and I thought, do you have a learning disability? Okay, let's see what it is. And I was diagnosed with ADHD in my 30s. So that added a layer of, oh, that makes sense too. Again, another turning point where you get this answer that makes a lot of sense in your life. And I've been on podcasts talking about ADHD and how that shows up in the workplace and for women and stuff. But I was in a social work program. And so I really started to kind of be like, oh my God, there's something here, right? And it took me years to kind of really flush that out and develop it. But, my practice now, my counseling practice, it's a combination of spirit working, because it is an important part of many people's lives. And traditional therapy or counseling completely omits that. It's almost like it doesn't exist. You can't talk about that. And it's like, well, we're removing something that's very important in people's lives. And culturally, being Latin, there are people in Latin society that will more easily go speak to the curandera than they
Right.
will a therapist. And so I said, I want to combine the two. I have the ability to still do the work that a curandera does, the clearings, the limpias, the readings, the wisdom that my guides have worked with me for decades now, combined with my training, right? And so I call it culturally informed counseling. And you don't have to be Latin to see me, but if you don't believe in a higher power, then you'd hate working with me, because it plays a role.
I'd say that'd be a little more niche of a client there, wouldn't it?
It would, but it's when people come across me, and it's starting to actually get more popular, believe it or not. But when people come across me, they're like relieved. They're like, oh, thank God. Thank God I don't have to hide part of who I am or how I believe or how I think things show up in my life. The reality is my worldview is an animistic worldview. So I believe that everything has a spirit. I believe that nature has a story to tell us, and lets us know. And when things are out of balance, they try to get back into balance. And, there are components of nature that reside within us as well. And there's a lot of people that have that understand that, and that are innately drawn to that. And so, am I the cup of tea for everyone? Absolutely not. But I only want to work with people that have that. So it's been very successful, and I'm very happy about that shift.
I used to think all that was a parlor trick. And then I met a friend of ours that who's, well, now she's a friend of ours. She did a reading for my wife, and I wasn't there for a reading, but she turned to me and she pinpointed things, and I'm not talking something vague, specific things
Yeah.
that there's absolutely no way she could have known. It's not something you could have guessed. It was to the T, and that made me start to believe. Well, I didn't realize that my wife had abilities until later on in our marriage, and now she's starting to to practice, and she's getting really good at it. But you've got to run across those people that think you're just some kind of charlatan.
Absolutely. And I don't blame them for that.
Right.
I don't blame them for that at all. Because the reality is that there are a lot of charlatans out there. There are a lot of people that, might be very good at reading micro expressions, or be very good at just kind of picking up certain things from what you're wearing, or kind of the background that you're in. So I don't blame them. I'm actually quite on side with people being skeptical. And I encourage people to be skeptical in this area, because there are other individuals that absolutely lose all common sense when it comes to spirit. And they're like, I love everything, and and everything's a sign. And it's like, we need discernment, right? It doesn't mean that that you just accept everything just the way it is, right? We've been given common sense, and we've been given free will for a reason, and you're to use that. So yeah, definitely, I think there's charlatans out there. The other thing that I see, because I do a lot of shows as well, I love kind of going into the witchy markets and the psychic fairs and things like that. What I see is a lot of people that have some gifts and think, I'm going to work with the public. And the reality is everybody has gifts, but absolutely not everybody is meant to work with the public, right? Are you meant to use those gifts in your daily life? Are you meant to, tell a friend if you have a premonition or a dream, or, your family? Yes. But there takes a certain level of ability, of ethics, of values, and of, what would be the other word, that like fortitude, to be able to wade out into the public and do this work, right? And for those people, that's a very, very small percentage. And so what you get is people that, like I've heard other readings, and I'm always shocked. And I'm not saying everybody's like that, but I have some clients where their reading would be like, the angels walk with you, and you're doing good in life. And I'm sitting there, and I go into detail. I will draw out your house, and I'll be like, this is the area in this closet tucked in this corner, this is where you need to find whatever it is that is coming up in the reading. I can describe to you the color of the eyes of your past loved one. The way that they walked, the injury in their hip, right? And I hear these other readings that are so vague, and I was like, how do you pay these people, right? Like, that's just, I don't know. I guess everybody has their own flavor and what they like, but I'm very practical when it comes to my work. It has to have an effect on your life, right? My work has a big healing component. I think that's a counselor in me. It's not enough for me to tell you what the next color of car you're going to buy is, right? What is blocking you in life? What is some of the stuff that is holding you back from succeeding with your podcast, right? Or succeeding with the business venture that you're doing, or the health issue that you've been running around in circles for 3 years. I don't diagnose stuff, but can I say they're showing me something here? Like, I have to be very cautious with that, but absolutely, when you find someone that's good, and they're rare, but they're out there, it will shift exactly what you said. All of a sudden, you're like, I wasn't a believer, and then everything changed. I have a blog post on my website, and it says, when you start to listen to your intuition, the reality is you're not going to like most of what you hear.
Right.
Because if you're truly speaking with spirit, if you truly are speaking with spirit, it's uncomfortable. It's not what you want to hear. It is going to probably challenge you in a lot of ways. And it's going to be something that most cases, not all, but most cases, you're going to grow, and you're going to be like, ah, because you've seen the signs popping up over and over in your life. Maybe it's you want to live in this area, and every time that you try and move there, every time that you find something, you're blocked, you're blocked, you're blocked, right? And it might be that that doesn't align with the purpose that you're here. And I think also, you rub up against a lot of new age beliefs. And new age beliefs are very much like you can create the life that you want. You can manifest anything that you want. You just got to think it, dream it, and it's going to come true. And I'm like, okay, great. How's that going to work to get out of jail? Tell me somebody that has a life sentence, how they're going to manifest out of jail. I'm 5'1.5". If I could have dreamt of being at least 5'5", trust me, it would have happened by now. But how am I going to manifest being taller? Right. So, we have to understand that there's free will, and then there is fate, and they dance a dance. Right.
Mhm.
And your manifestation ability stops when it comes up to your fate. Right. When it
Right.
comes up to things that you have that you're here to accomplish, and your guides are always, your intuition is always going to be leaving you the breadcrumbs towards what you're here to accomplish first and foremost.
So do you have a website?
I do. It's called curandera.ca, curandera.ca. And I have clients from all over the world. Counseling primarily. I work at least for like insurance purposes and stuff. I work in Ontario, Canada. But anything else outside of that, I have clients all around the world.
And what is your social media?
I'm not great at it. So you'll only find one. I have Instagram. And it's the same as my website, curandera.ca. It's on Instagram. I'm still old school. I started my business. It's going to be 20 years. Actually, it's already 20 years because it was in the summer of 2004 when I started. So pre-social media, it was very much, and it still continues to be word of mouth. Especially when it's people that, just like you've met a lot of charlatans. So the idea of like trying something new kind of might turn you off, right? So, I think this is a business where still word of mouth reigns supreme.
Well, I'm going to put all those links in the
And
description.
thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah. We also have a couple of other endeavors. The tradition that I practice believes a lot in spiritual bathing. So there's bath products that we make. I also make ritual room sprays for those times where you don't have the ability to burn anything, and you might want to change the energy in the room, or for paranormal investigations or ghost hunting, where you might need the help of an herb if you've picked something up while you're out and about. Our sprays are great for that as well. But also like hotel rooms where you can't open the window and it just feels heavy, even though it's clean. Or like workplaces, or if you use public transit, a lot of energy there. So they help with that as well. And my husband is also a practicing Solomonic magician. And so we combine a lot of our work together. He does a lot of astrological talismans as well. Those are fantastic. Those are going to be up on the site soon. We would only make them and we'd sell out right away. So now we're trying to like have stock, because you can only make them at certain times of the year, and at certain astrological alignments. But my practice is growing where people are asking more and more for that. So that's something that we'll be bringing out soon.
Oh, cool. Well, as I said, I will put all those links in the description to make it easier for folks to find you. But Carolina, thank you so much for spending your time with me today.
Thank you, Kyle. It was great to have this chat. I really appreciate the opportunity.
And also want to thank all you folks out there. If you are new to the channel, I hope you'll come back. Please hit that subscribe button from our regulars. You guys are awesome because you make it possible for me to do this. And until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless, saying peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network